Good afternoon. Well, it's afternoon here in the UK. Good morning, good evening, wherever you're in the world. Today I have a very special guest. She's a life coach and also a good speaker. I've heard a lot of good things about her talks. She speaks for funding in the UK as well, and I've heard a lot of good things about her work as well. So we welcome Carol-Ann Reid to the show. Welcome, Carol-Ann. Good to have you on board.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting us today. Thank you.
Yeah, no, wonderful. It's good to have you on board. And so, Carol-Ann, you work in coaching, you life coaching and speaking. Can you tell us about some of the areas you specialise in? We sort of spoke about people in transition. They're in this sort of crossroads in their life, whether it be business or personal life or wherever, really. Can you give a bit of an idea, a bit of insight in terms of the sort of person who comes to see you and what you do?
Of course I can. So the area that I kind of specialise in is, it tends to be, as you've just said, when people are going through a transition. Now, they say that an average of every 5 months, on average, we go through a change in our life, whether that's career, it could be relationship, health, a new pet, a loss, something, and they say an average of 5 months. Now, what I sort of really specialize in is helping people to transition, but also make sure that their self-identity, their values, their beliefs are all aligned with this new venture. So it's really quite exciting. We sort of, because I'm Master NLP Practitioner as well, so utilize some of the skills as yourself, the skills, the techniques, and really get to the bottom of if it is a career change, that we're not still in the, say for instance, if someone's transitioning from a full-time career into self-employed or a business owner, that we're not still stuck in that 9-to-5 mindset, that we're taking everything, renewing it, stripping it back, bam, like now let's move forward. We know what direction, who we are and where we're going.
That's really interesting stuff. And you mentioned identity there, and there's plenty of behavioural strategies out there and books out there. And a lot of the time it's the identity, how one defines who they are, has a big impact on their behaviour. And I think for me, a lot of people you see sort of, they go from the fire to the frying pan, where they go from, say, maybe one job or one relationship, whatever it is in their life, and they go to the next one where they carry the sort of baggage with them. So it's about sort of self-reflection. And do you think when you deal with people's identity, it can be quite sort of deep and I wouldn't say traumatic in the sense that, okay, it's like trauma, as we know, aversion around certain situations, but can it be a bit daunting for them to work on their identity?
Yeah, good question. I think what I tend to see, and I don't know if I've coined this or if it's like a thing out there, but I call it like an identity crisis, where everything in people's surroundings sounds right, it looks right, like aesthetically, social media is like on point. But as you've said, like internally, they're in this, they just don't feel right and they feel quite stuck. So when we do delve into it, I sort of see it in like different layers. One of the key layers being values. So many of us can live with our old values, those old stories and beliefs. So it's sort of like updating. It's like doing an update on your laptop or your phone. It's making sure everything is fully functioning, fully aligning with the current moment. So yeah, I suppose we do go quite deep, but it's in that depth and discovery where you actually find those little nuggets of, okay, if I do go down that route, actually, that isn't aligned with my soul value or my purpose or my passion. So it's a great chance to sort of, yeah, like you said, really explore the human and their, like we said, like the passions and their purpose, and then make sure everything is aligned. Because if we're building from the foundations up, we want to make sure that we're not building like a business or a relationship on old rocky ground. We want to make sure that that's fresh and it's like strong before we build.
Absolutely, you know, I think that's really important, and to sort of build a solid foundation rather than sort of going into the situation and sort of leave it to chance. Build for sustainable change, for long-term change, that's for sure. And just out of interest, in terms of what got you into what you do, it's quite an interesting role that you do. You do the coaching and NLP as well, and the speaking. And what motivated you, Carol-Ann, to go into your field?
Yeah, well, my background is actually in performing arts. So, like back in the day, as we'd say up north, I was a singer dancer, and I did quite a lot of traveling. And then when I settled back down in the UK, if I'm honest, which I like completely transparent, I struggled a lot with my own self-identity. When I was younger, up until sort of early 20s, I'd say mid-20s, it was a lot of conforming to society, trying to kind of fit in, but still knowing, I mean, I'm like a bit of a rock chick. I love like quite random stuff. And I used to almost suppress it a little bit because I'd be like, oh, well, that might not fit with that person or that job or that this. And I found it led to really bad anxiety and bouts of depression myself. And then when I did settle down, I lost my stepdad to suicide, which was a big light bulb moment of like, you know, like when the world feels like it's just stopped. And it was more than a mourning. There was a lot of evaluating, and I just got drawn into that. How did we not know what was going on between his two ears? How like that self-talk and our beliefs about ourselves is, well, it's life. It is the life force. I very strongly kind of discovered. And it was in quite a split moment. It was like, I'm quitting what I'm doing and I'm going to throw my life into helping other people. So I kind of started with myself, did a lot of self-discovery, development, went to every freaking seminar around and then just went on a quest to really try to help people eliminate this perception of who we should be and align the self-talk with who we really are.
That's really fascinating, and I think that, you know, certainly there's some of the best coaches and therapists have had experiences themselves that they can relate to, and I think that's quite useful in terms of our own development and self-awareness, that's for sure. In terms of people coming to see you in transition, what are some of the common people who sort of, I mean, that's a sort of generalization, what are some of the sort of, I wouldn't say common things, but the general things people, you know, phone you up and to see you about? We sort of talked about business and self-identity and relations. Is there a current theme at the moment, Carol-Ann, that will come to see you about? Or?
Yes, there is. It's what I find is the people that are coming to us are those that have reached a certain level of success, like quite what we would very stereotypical sort of say, like great success, whether that's sort of financial. So like sort of on the outside, everything seems like hunky-dory, but on the inside, there's just this block. And it's almost like they have a feeling of guilt because outside, they've got a roof over their head, they've got love, support, they've got their health, but they can't figure out why something doesn't quite feel right. And it's sort of in almost a turmoil, hamster wheel point of view. So I find that a lot of the people that I work with are in that kind of position. And it tends to be that they've really thrown themselves almost down a rabbit hole of what they believe they should be doing. And then they've kind of gone, oh, okay, this just isn't for me, maybe. But they feel like they're almost gone too far to just go, I'm out. So it's that kind of thing of, okay, like between me and you, this is how I'm feeling, but the outside world doesn't know that. That's kind of the theme I get, if I was to say.
So it's a bit like bottling up a bottle, really, of fizzy pop to a point where you keep shaking and eventually it's going to explode on the thing. But the point being is, as well, too, Carolyn, I was thinking that, okay, for people, I mean, you come across as someone who's really motivated and you travelled and you had a career in other areas and you've got the desire to change. For many people, it can be daunting to change as well. And when I say daunting, I think sometimes you go to these seminars, as no doubt you've been to plenty of seminars, I've been to plenty myself, and there's a lot of like, you know, get up and go, and it's sort of high octane and the music's going and they're all pumped up. But the issue is afterwards, Carol-Ann, is that the day after, it's not as easy as that, and the world can be a tough, maybe this is my presupposition generalization, but the world can be a tough, unforgiving place, and in a sense where people have got, you know, responsibilities and commitments, and to change sometimes it's not always easy. And for someone to say, you know, I'm going to leave my job, or or whatever really. And do you find that's the case? Do you find that for some people it can be a bit daunting to change and sort of better the devil I know type thing, I'll just stay where I am? Or do you find that? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that what they tend to, it's such a great thing that you've just said about feeling the motivation. And if you're in your own mind, whether you're at an event or maybe going a walk and you've got that white space and your mind starts creating, and then when you get home and you're like, oh, I've got the bills, I've got
exactly.
I'm like, I can't be like, I'm going to run to Bali and write my novel. It's like,
precisely, you gotta keep the wolves at bay.
As much as but this is the thing, I think one of the key messages that I'm really, really sort of currently putting out there, and that I think that's so, so important, is we always have a choice. Every second of every day, even when we feel that we're stuck in the career, the relationship, or even if we don't feel that we're stuck, but if we're in a career, and some people don't even think, they're like, I'm just here for life, so I'm just going to be happy being unhappy. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Totally not the case. We always have a choice.
Yes.
I think it's empowering ourselves that everything that we learned at, say, the seminar yesterday, and we feel that excitement, the self-talk, bring it back around to the self-talk, well, that person up on the stage, well, it's all right for them because they had a degree.
Yes.
It's all right for them because they've got a marketing team, or it's all right for them because they got an inheritance. I don't know, but we can come up with these stories of it's all right for them, it's not for me.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it's really, I like that point you made there, because people, you're sort of are really, you're sort of got a lot of get up and go, and you come across as being highly motivated, and everything else really above your character, everything else that goes with it. The point being is that, certainly in my experience, and I do agree we've got a choice, well, at least to a point we've got a choice, but all of us are running a different race, so to speak. But certainly what you said there resonates. I've had people come to my seminar saying it's all right for you, but I don't know the first thing about me. And I had this woman saying to me one time, it's all right for you, without knowing the first thing about where I'd been through to get to where I was. And I said, well, and I just told her straight, I said, well, you don't really know a great deal about where I've been on my own journey. I don't know where you are on your journey, but I do know in my experience of working with people that there's people who sort of defy much adversity. And I said, just work at your own pace. It's not a race against anybody else. Extend your comfort zone. You don't have to just jump, sink, or swim. It can be just step by step, incrementally. But, you can sort of rattle off the names of many people who've sort of gone away and achieved in that sense. But equally saying that, I think the desire to change must be there. You'll find the way, you'll find the excuse. And do you agree, in the work that you do, they must want to change? There has to be a desire for change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is why the sort of the discovering, because so many people, and I'm sure that you no doubt work with people exactly the same, they'll say, I want to change, but.
Yes.
And it always tends to be followed by a but, and it might be a money block. It might be a time restraint. It might be but I'm going to have to wait until I've done this first and then I'm able to do that. And I always almost want to challenge people and say, okay, you've got 12 months left for the rest of your life. Like, what would you shake up right now in your life to align it? To make sure, yeah. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, I do this, and then it all flows because it's all hypothetical, and they know that there isn't like you're not buying in just yet to the thing of, okay, I could change. And it's like, okay, well, what would you have to do now to make that believable that you could do that, even if you've got another 50, 80, 100 years ahead of you? The way science is going, we could be looking at hundreds.
Precisely,
and then
exactly.
Oh, and you can see then it's like all these blocks, and it's like the buts. I just call them the big buts. They're like, oh, yeah, they're still there, but when they then become questionable, and it's like, are they legit, or are they stories that we've picked up from our grandparents, our parents, our society?
The narrative, yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting you say, because I've drawn the conclusion that some people like the idea of doing something, but they don't like the doing. Like they want to be. They like the idea of being a professional footballer. They like the idea of being in a band. They like the idea of doing one thing or the other. But when they've got to roll their sleeves up and do it, it's just the doing is a different story. And I sort of speak to people and, they say to me, I like the idea of doing what I do, for example, but they don't know the first thing about what I do and how much work I put into doing it. You might know that yourself. And I've taken people on work experience in the past, and I've worked in football and in general activities. When they've seen the insight in terms of how much work you got to put in, then they sort of have this realization, well, actually, you know what? And I think for me, you mentioned a really good point there about social media. And when I use social media, and I sort of like to put the occasional personal post up there as well. It's just the way it is. I'm not on there all the time. I don't really get the time to go on there very often. But when I do, I put a variety of posts. But do you think social media has changed the dynamic of the way we see the world, Carolyn? Do you think people sort of see social media and draw these big comparisons? And it's like the showreel syndrome, I call it, where I compare myself to your best 2 seconds or minute of the day that gets posted up there. And I feel disappointed, I think, if like I compare myself to, because no one puts on social media they've stubbed their toe or they've fallen over the pavement. It's always the best thing. Do you think that's sort of causing people a lot of unfulfillment as well?
Monumentally. I can't think of a big enough word to agree with what you've just said. I'm going to say 40 to 50% of the people I work with, comparison is one of the underpinning things that is causing the limiting beliefs. That, I mean, if it's almost like everyone has got their own like TV channel. So everyone has this access to the TV channel. You don't get to see who's behind set. You don't get to see the costume changes. You don't get to see the hard work. We only get to see the highlights of people's life. And I've worked recently with a couple of business owners, and the way I sort of describe it is, if we were on a bike, let's say, and I'm pedaling forward and I'm like looking ahead, if I start looking to the right, like naturally you start to steer off. Or if I was to the left, like you naturally steer off. It's the exact same thing in life. We are so, there's loads of different, it really gets me fired up, this one.
Yeah.
We can easily get distracted, and I'll hold my hands up and say, like, absolutely, I've done this myself. And I'm sure you'll agree, as you said then, is actually as coaches, influencers, etc. out there, we have to go online and play in that role as well to some degree to get people's attention, to say, hey, over here, like, this is reality. You haven't got to conform to what everyone else is doing. And
yes,
I found myself, I did a butt naked face shot the other day after the gym. I didn't want to do that. I really didn't want to do that. But I'd look through social media and everything was this like perfect thing after a workout. I'm like, you've not worked out, that's staged. So I sort of tried to take one for the team a bit and get a little bit in there, but we have to go in there. And I found myself checking online more and doing this and doing that. And then the more I've looked into it, it physically activates the same part of our brain as it does in gamblers.
Absolutely, yeah. It can be addictive, very much so, yeah.
Yeah, it's so addictive for people. So I think the comparison thing, absolutely. And I would always recommend to people, if there's specific people that you are finding yourself compared to, like, unfollow. Don't remove them. Unfollow. They're there. You can have a little check. But if they're in your face and you're comparing your teeth to them, your career to them, their family life, like, I mean, you're looking at this now. What you can't see is I've got like my pens, my glasses on. It looks cute, but the reality is I've got crap all over my desk. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, no, absolutely, and that's for sure. And we sort of, that confirmation bias, we tend to see what we want to see in one sense. And it's pretty interesting that you mentioned that. And sort of, I think it's quite fascinating the way you sort of got into doing what you do, and you're being honest and open about your own career and your transition. Now, we get many coaches who watch this show as well, and some aspiring people who are looking to go into coaching. And what would you say to someone who's starting out their journey, Carol-Ann, who's thinking, okay, I'd like to be a coach or be a speaker like yourself, and what are some words of wisdom? I'm not sort of one for advice, obviously we're on our own journey, but what are some sort of lessons learned for yourself or anyone new sort of thinking about getting into the business of coaching and speaking? What would you say, looking back on things in terms of lessons that you?
question. Good question. I think a couple of pointers. One would be work as hard on yourself as you would as a client that is going to pay you £1 million. So imagine that you are your number one client. So absorb every bit of information, but put it through your filter. So number one is like discover yourself, your values, what drives you, because we have to remember that the books, the videos, it's a particular person's opinion. They've learned a lot from other people. So we have to understand that there isn't necessarily one particular way. There's not one box fits all kind of thing, but really, really work on shedding your own stuff, because the more enlightened you become, the more it's like intuitive coaching as well. I'm going to say massively now over the last few years, I've used my intuition as much as I have the freaking grow model. Also, do you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It comes down to it's like having a toolbox. Fill your coaching toolbox with as many things. So when you get a client, you're not going, you're like, right, let's try this. Let's try this. Let's do this. Let's do that. And then before you know it, you've got like your own recipe for your style of coaching. Like, be unique with it. Be okay with that. Another thing is just, I think, because I've now, just like yourself with the book, with the radio, with the presenting, with the speaking, with the coaching, like, you just have to say yes, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. But that can be tough, you know. I think in one sense that I was going to say, it's interesting you say, and I think for some people, I mean, on the speaking side of things, and certainly on radio, one thing I've learned over the years, Carol-Ann, for some people it's a little bit daunting, and I've kind of, I wouldn't say I've taken it for granted, but I kind of, like yourself, I sort of, you know, put myself forward. But equally in saying that, for me, and one thing I want to sort of get to, because I'm a member of a speaking group now. I've been a member for a while now. I go occasionally. The group's called Toastmasters. People probably know I'm commissioned for them. No, there's one in every like city type thing around the world. And I joined and rejoined, you know, recently. People say, why do I need to join? Just to sort of keep on top of things as you do. But I'm a lifelong learner, by the way. But the point being is that any sort of tips on speaking, because public speaking can be really daunting for people, and yourself, you know, you're a very good speaker, an excellent speaker. You get a lot of good feedback. People enjoy going to the speaking that you do. So for someone sort of starting out in the speaking circuit, irrespective of whether it's sort of coaching, whatever, what's some sort of tips you can give them, Carol-Ann, in terms of your experience? You know, you've been on stage before. I think, you know, obviously you've been on stage. You mentioned with music and other things, but what are things you can give to people in terms of speaking? Any sort of tips you can give?
Absolutely. And I think even though my background was in singing and dancing, the speaking part is like so different. I feel like it takes a different, because I used to, it was like you show up, you do your thing.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, I'm showing up as Carol-Ann Reid. Like, this is me. It feels quite different. It would be speak about what you're passionate about. So if there's something that you could just talk about all day, or that you have an interest in, something that like lights you up, that you kind of find yourself going, oh, like, don't get me started on that because I just love this, or something that really fuels your fire, that's a great place to start if you are going out on the circuits as a speaker. Really, really finding one thing I've found over sort of the last few years of building up my speaking to a paid point of view was I did a lot of free talks.
Yes.
I thoroughly enjoyed that. I used to do a lot of talks in like schools for free. It was always like about the give back. And I found that by doing that, I know what works, what doesn't, what topics flow from me, and you feel as if it's being given you, like, where the hell have those words just come from? It's like flowing through you. And somewhere I'm like, like totally robotic. And I'm like, nope, this is what I'm going to stick at. So I'd actually suggest, even if it's the local like brownies or scouts or something, that if there's a school or a college or a company local, like, really practice putting yourself out there and just offer this. That's something that worked for me. This is one person's view.
No, for sure. But it's really interesting you say that. I think that I think that's a great sentiment, because people want everything today. and you've got to do the hard yards. And at least in my opinion, I think you've got to go out there and refine and get out there. And I get a lot of people saying to me, I've been speaking for a long time now, and how do you get to where you are and everything else that goes with it? But they don't see the stuff I did, what you've done and do. You know, I've done talks to many people, but I've also turned up when there's one person then, and I've my commitment, and that's just who I am. So I'm quite conscientious. The thing I sort of struggled with in the beginning, and to be honest, still do now occasionally, is the, like you mentioned before, about I'm comfortable. So I have a background in sport and music myself, so I'm quite comfortable when I'm doing what I do in that respect, because they're the sort of crowds away from me, and I go into different identity. As a speaker, when people are close in my proximity, myself, my natural trait is on a spectrum, close to the introvert rather than extrovert. Ironically, people probably aren't aware of that, because they kind of think he's done a million talks type thing, he must be an extrovert. Actually, as it happens, I really enjoy doing the research and learning, and I do the engagements because I feel I've got a lot to offer and I can help people best I can. But ironically for me, it's taken practice. And in the beginning for me, Carol-Ann, it was a big challenge, because my first talk didn't go really well years ago. Hence I would join a speaking group and really work on it hard. It took a bit of time to get there. And now I sort of got to the stage in my career where I think, you know what, this is it. I go out there, I've got nothing to prove to anybody, and that's the way I've been. I convey, I don't convince. This is what I know, and that's the end of the story. I know I've got a lot to offer, a lot of experience, and what you say resonates with me. I'm really glad you mentioned that, because a lot of people want everything today, and it's not always easy to do that. We mentioned up there about your book. You've got a book coming out, I believe, so talk a bit about the book as well.
Yeah, so we've got the book. Actually, I've actually just thought I'm creating, I'll share you the link when it's all done, but one thing that I am actually creating is a confident speaker crash course, because I do get asked all so often, how do you, and I just as you've just said then, there's like little sort of step by step. So when it's all done, I will have to sort of, I'll let you know and see. I'm sure that there's loads of points on it that you resonate with. I'd love to hear your kind of view on it, if you like.
Absolutely, yeah, no, definitely. And we can invite you to the radio show as well myself, so maybe we can sort of touch base on the book as well. So
awesome, yeah. Awesome. So with the book, yeah, God, it's come around so fast. So the book is getting launched. It's actually called The Woman I'm Becoming. It's been launched on International Women's Day, which is next Friday.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's actually aimed at teenage girls and young women. And it's basically, and I'm sure that there's like for the men as well, but there is so much we did not get taught at school to prepare us for life. So there's like 19 different professionals, from nutritionists, relationship experts, coach, and we've come together to basically create like an A to Z of the stuff that we don't get taught at school. Yes. So mine's very much around the concept, actually sort of coming back around to the loss of Barry, my stepdad, was creating a way to recognize the self-talk, because it just goes on in the background. It feels like there's, I know you mentioned it before, like the sort of the neuroscience side to it, but I call it the worrier versus warrior thinking. So I've put that down into a chapter on how to help and inspire women and men. I work a lot with men, actually majority men, but the book was tailored specifically for women. But it is how to recognize the worrier thoughts, the negative thoughts, the doubts, and stop and replace them with what I call the warrior thoughts. All of us, you have an epic warrior in you. Every person watching this has a warrior within them. Everything that you've been through, the tough, the lessons, the losses, like you're still here. And that is what I call like the warrior within. So we can tap into that. So it's a lot of, it sounds really cheesy, but like the affirmations, the positive reinforcement to self and changing that self-talk. So that's what my chapter's about. And yeah, launch next Friday.
Yeah, that's really good. Looking forward to having a see. And I think it's really important what you said there. I think that for me, many people in my experience, in my journey, they've got this perception of coaching or even therapy for that matter. You go and do a session and you're on the way. And I think you can do a lot in a short space of time, by the way. But the point being, it's also important to carry on. Like, you don't eat one nutrition meal and you're healthy forever. You don't do one exercise session. There's this misconception that, I'll just do a session. And that's a really important thing for me, like the affirmation, incantation, and doing stuff away to keep it going, meditate, well, whatever sort of you can integrate, psychoeducation. All these things are really important, I think, to sort of go away. And I'm not sort of advocating homework and that stuff, but I think to go away and work on the mind, because it's pretty tough out there. It's not easy. And, you mentioned before, bereavements and stuff like that. And we go through all these things through life and you get knocked down. And it's not always easy. And I think it's really important that people do carry on with whatever is appropriate to them. There's no one size fits all. Maybe in the future we'll have more tailored approaches for people if we learn more about the genes. At the moment, as much as there's been some big insights into genetic, we're still a long way from a tailored approach. But we sort of can be optimistic that one day we'll get there. But for now, we work what we've got, and that's the important thing. It's really interesting stuff. So you tell yourself, Carolyn, you got anything else coming up? Any talks that you can sort of tell the viewers, or anything coming up to yourself?
I'm doing a talk down in Bristol in April.
Okay.
And that is on a talk called The Power of You. So it's mindset hacks to enhance your performance both in and out of the workplace. So I do a lot of work around a simple morning routine structure called bagel. It's like you have to have your bagel before you leave the house, sort of thing.
That's definitely me, that's for sure. Yeah.
And it's sort of what it stands for is breathe, affirmation, gratitude, exercise, and love yourself.
Wow.
So I go into a lot more detail about that in the talk, and yeah, just sort of inspire or try to help people to recognize that, just like you said, we don't do the one sit up and boom, I've got a six.
Yeah.
We can't.
Yeah.
And we have so many pills and tablets out there to help growth and do this and help us be happy. But actually, if we really stop and take responsibility and do as much as we can to help our success and happiness and our overall well-being, actually, everything starts to change, our perception, our environment, everything. So yeah, we got the talk in April. And then the International Women's Day book launch is in Cheshire on the 23rd of March.
Fantastic, yeah.
If anyone's local and wants to come down, it'd be epic.
Absolutely, and interesting you say, I'm a big advocate as well of responsibility. I think it's important that we take responsibility, the cards we dealt with and all that. The only thing I'd say, Carol-Ann, with that would be sometimes responsibility without reward can be a challenging thing for some people, where you give it all you've got and sometimes you're the one that gets left carrying the bag and people kind of pass the buck type thing. And certainly my experience of working across a broad range of areas, sometimes you're the one who's conscientious and you're the one that takes everything on board and you sort of carry the bag for everybody else. And it can be tough for some people too, Do you find that's the case as well, where sometimes you take all this responsibility, but then if rewards aren't forthcoming, and I know it's internal gratification and intrinsic reward, but it can be pretty tough, I think, as well, to be the one that sort of carries everybody else and the burden on the shoulders. And do you think that's the case as well? Just maybe my perception. Maybe I'm becoming a bit more cynical.
I couldn't agree anymore. And I actually think as a coach, you have to learn these skills. And I think that they could be utilized and shared universally for every human being, because whether you work at a fast food takeaway, if someone's order isn't right, they're coming to you. And if a family member, if you've not done the washing up, they're coming to you. So we're always exchanging. I can't remember which book it is when they're saying about people pass you their monkeys, and it's like having the monkeys on your back.
Interesting, yeah.
And since I read that, I remember being like, whoa, I've got 4 apes on my back right now, and they're not mine. And when we can really begin to recognize, again, bringing it all the way back to that choice, it's seeing it almost as a visual. It's like if I've just had a phone call with a friend and they're like really down and they're this, and so easy to energetically take on board what that is. So if I now see that as, okay, I've got their monkey on my shoulder, can I control or help? Look at the answers. Yes, no, maybe. Like, what are the options then? Again, choice. If yes, what is that? What options do I have? Do I want to do that? Is that going to benefit me? Is it just going to benefit them? Am I happy if it just benefits them? If so, yes, take action. If no, like hypothetically, it's very much aligned with the NLP. It's like, I'm going to move this monkey and I'm going to appreciate and I'm going to pet it. But right now, I've got my life. It's like the oxygen thing, isn't it? You've got to look at.
Absolutely, yeah. One must save themselves. They've got a chance of saving anywhere else. So very much so. Or diving into a pool that you can't swim in. And it's probably not a good idea, because then you'll both end up drowning. So you take what you can to pass the person to bring them out. And that's the sort of thing, really, metaphorically speaking, so to speak. But I can see sometimes people who it's not for the will of trying as well, and they put the effort in, and adversity, life being the way it is. And I think one thing that for me that dawns on me, from the motivational point of view, it's great, and motivation will take you so far, and you're motivated, but then the next you get up in the morning and life does not go to plan. And I think it's really useful that you mentioned there, certainly the acronym you used there, the BAGEL acronym. I think it's quite fascinating, and I certainly incorporate some things you've mentioned. Start of my days in yoga, I make a big green juice in the morning and go for a walk and just get out of my own head. I have my coffee as well too eventually. But the point being is that, it's these sort of things we do, isn't it? We've got to keep it going. And certainly I don't think my life has been any less challenging than the majority of people. Some people a little bit more, some people less, but all things being well, we pretty much all suffer on some level. And for me, one of the things for me, Carol-Ann, I've always been more of an existentialist in terms of, I've sort of studied many modalities, NLP being one of them, and a bit of a training for NLP. But I think for me, getting meaning has been a big thing, and I always look for the meaning in certain situations, because there's a sort of borderline, fine line between becoming nihilistic and nothing's important no more, and sort of resigning ourselves to what's the point. Sometimes you feel that way, or certainly I have, and people I've worked with have, but finding meaning inadvertently for me, it's probably not very NLP-ish, but the point being for me, finding that meaning can help, just take it day by day, step by step, and do what we can with what we've got.
Absolutely. And I think it's such a good point. When you start to discover the meaning, you then start to see, almost on that like gut instinct level, like, is this serving me? Is there anything I can change? It's almost taking the responsibility for it, because you're actually willing to stop and examine it. You're not the sufferer or the victim to a circumstance. You've taken a little bit of, I don't like to use the word power, but let's use it as an energetic sense. We've taken that power back, and then now we're looking for a meaning, rather than that happening to us. So then just is such a great point. You're then actually able to go, okay, what is it mean? And I think when people, God, there's so many things. I know I shared about my stepdad, but just as you've said, it's so important for anyone that is listening, if they kind of think, but they've done that, and they've had that happen. There's a million things still in the skeletons in the closet that even I'm not quite ready to share yet. Like, we've all got these layers of ourselves that we're working on. And one of the biggest things that's helped me overcome past traumas and mistakes and lessons is actually see that I'm not a victim to my circumstance. It felt like I was, and to social media, it'd be like, oh my God, she was a victim. But what's the meaning? The meaning might be that it was a change of direction. It might be that I found self-worth. It might be that you found a new friendship group or a relationship or a career. And it's finding not the silver lining, but the meaning, what.
Absolutely, yeah. I think so.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's for a reason, and we end up sometimes at the time, it can be quite disheartening and demoralising, but saying that we look back in time, things that didn't happen, I wouldn't be here, I wouldn't be there. And that's one way sometimes it's about looking outside the box and thinking, okay, there are certain things that happen in life that we might not be where we wanted to be, but we need to be, sort of keep going and going from there. And tomorrow's a new day and it's fresh start.
Embrace it. Embrace it.
Yeah, exactly. I think so, for sure, definitely. So, no, it's really, really fascinating. I think that certainly you've sort of shared some really interesting concepts. It's been a really interesting insight to your own career, a really interesting insight into an honest insight into your own sort of development and being a coach. Many new coaches and speakers listen to what you have to say and some techniques. So I'm sure the viewers have had a lot out of the program. In terms of, do you have any mechanisms for people if they want to get in touch with you, Carol-Ann, anyone watching who might want to email you on anything you covered, or maybe go into one of your talks or the books there, and see if they can get in touch? Or
yeah, absolutely. Probably the most place where I'm active, I would probably say, is Facebook, which is at Carol-Ann Reid Coach.
Okay.
And Carol-Ann is Carol with like a little hyphen ANN and then Reid REID. Or my website as well. That's only just, I've had a big transition myself as well, so it's a new one, and that's www.carolannreid.com.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing.
Bits and bobs on there about the talks and stuff.
No, that's fantastic. And people in Bristol can, or people anywhere around the country can go to Bristol and anywhere around the world. Watch in Bristol or April, you've got the book launch as well, and other events too, so they can keep in touch with all that sort of stuff, all the things you're doing that are going on. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, Carolyn. I really enjoyed speaking to you, and it's been a wonderful insight into your career. I wish you all the best for the book launch and your speaking engagements at fellow Funzing speaker as well. So it's always good to speak to fellow Funzing speakers. It's a great organisation. I've enjoyed speaking for them too as well. So thanks again, Caroline.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jimmy.